So another interesting thing that happened in the last 7 days would have to be the NXT releases. And now you put out a short teaser because last week we obviously recorded the podcast on Friday instead of Thursday.
Yeah.
And you put out a little teaser on the YouTube channel about your thoughts and included it into the video.
Yeah, I had to jam it into the podcast at the 11th hour before putting it, and it sounds totally different.
Well, dude, I was gone from Civilization for like 3 days, and when I came back, I'm like, what? Releases? And then I went on like the YouTube channel, and I'm like, there's Brian talked about it. I don't remember him talking about that. And I'm like going through the podcast, like, how did he fit this in?
Right. Through very unclever editing. But no, that was interesting as an understatement for this headline, Jay, because last Friday, NXT just gutted so many of their talent, people who were just very recently on TV for many of those cases. The list is Bobby Fish, Bronson Reed, who is the last North American champion for the current one, Mercedes Martinez, Tyler Rust, who we know as Ryan Taylor, and he wrestled in California for a while.
Oh, really?
And
I did not know.
He was the WCWC champion for a while. You know this.
Yeah, well, he was the first guy ever ring announced at EWF in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So, wow.
So you didn't realize he was signed?
I knew he was down there. I just didn't know that he had a name and he was on air.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was part of the Diamond Mine, which just debuted and was still on TV, and she's gone. Kona Reeves, who is around for a while, is NXT's finest. Then Leon Ruff, Stephen Smith, Jake Atlas, Ari Sterling, Desmond Troy, Zechariah Smith, Asher Hale.
Wasn't Ruff in like a tag team or something?
And Giant Zangier. Ruff was one of the most recent North American champions.
Yeah, I know. I remember they put the belt on him. He's so small.
Then he was in his first match. He was kind of like the hapless victim, and he just ends up winning the thing. But that list is like, first of all, it's startling in so many ways. And I talked a little bit about this in the story I jammed into the podcast last week. For a lot of different reasons. Again, because of the recency for a lot of these people who have been on television. Mercedes was nursing an injury. She got knocked out by a Xia Li kick, and then she was fired while she was recovering. That's shitty. It happens though. I guess it's wrestling. It's the business.
She didn't want to be part of
retribution.
Retribution. Yeah, I guess
and that was her retribution.
I guess. Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, she was older though. Am I wrong?
Well, I mean, she's a 20-year veteran, and so but that's still kind of a person you would want to have on hand for as a coach. Think of what Sarah Del Rey has done for the women in WWE, and so think of what that 1-2 combination of her and Mercedes, possibly.
Yeah, I get that, but she totally goes against it, although some of them don't. This whole thing that I guess they're going to try to do now with NXT, where they're going to get younger and bigger people.
Well, that seems to be a big reason as to why so many of these names were cut and being cut, is because there seems to be this kind of, there's rumors and reports. And again, we're talking about the Keith Lee stories and how those rumors and reports ran rampant.
Right.
So, I mean, we're kind of entering murky water with these other reports and rumors that NXT is going to undergo this big philosophical and presentation change, and it's going to harken back to the days of like OVW, where it's like body guys who don't really know how to work, and but they're given chances to grow basically in a smaller scale, and less PWG, less Ring of Honor style, which is that seems to be what Triple H was going for with NXT.
Well, we all know that when NXT first started going big with things and on the change from FCW, and they started signing all these indie darlings, it was because, they were trying to compete with Ring of Honor and Impact and stuff. Exactly. They never said it.
Right. Well, that was the thing. I think one of the recent reports I heard about it, one of the things Sean Ross Sapp reported, is there's an executive or somebody that is one of his sources saying that, in 2014, there was this philosophy of scoop everyone up we can. We have to just hoard this talent.
Which is why they have over 200 people signed to contracts.
It was so transparent and everyone knew it, but of course they never really made that abundantly clear or public, but now it's coming out that was obviously the intention. And so now a lot of it's just kind of sloughing off, and we talked about this in the previous weeks with all these releases. They have so many names, like you said, so I guess it's bound to happen, and we keep coming back to this whole thing. It's just because of that practice.
Boy, Vince wasn't joking when he said we can help him out with some more names.
With AEW, right?
Jeez.
And he's ongoing with it. It's just really the idea of NXT as we know it changing into something that kind of harkens back to this kind of bygone era of Cena and Lesnar and Orton, and Benjamin and those characters. What do you think about that? Do you think the style is really going to change so much? It goes back down to this more kind of like simpler time, like before we get the super indie style that like we're doing today.
I mean, maybe to be safer as a corporation or something like that. That's the only thing I can think of, because maybe they're just gonna be like, well, if you guys want to do flips and kill yourselves, go over on TNT. and
Right.
we'll just keep the more ground and pound here or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not really sure what to think about that.
Yeah, but I mean, if they're trying to get more people, they want to grow themselves from the ground up and less emphasis on indie darlings like we've talked about. That's going to be a very interesting process, because it takes a long time to train a wrestler, and there's some physical specimens who are going to be super, athletic and gifted and take to it right away, but not everyone's going to be an Angle or a Lesnar, and so and that's going to be a long process.
Well, the reports were that Vince and Bruce and Laurinaitis visited the Performance Center and took a look at a lot of the talents, and apparently some of the ones that were cut were people that he thought were just kind of like, oh, we have other guys like these people or something.
Well, it's a matter of, I think, Ari Sterling on social media talked about his release, and he had a very prescient line, a very interesting line, I should say, where he says, I'm not what they're looking for anymore. So it's like NXT in particular had gone this route of like smaller guys and more of that super athletics, like I mentioned, the super indie style where size isn't really a barrier to entry and it allows smaller wrestlers to come in. I guess 20 years ago or 25 years ago, Kevin Nash might have called them vanilla midgets.
Right.
And so that it's ironic that that's kind of what NXT has been, and but like we said, it's a reflection of what the indie style is, PWG, ROH, all this stuff, and so it's just hard to believe that it's going to be a total change. I mean, because there's still a lot of people who are still with NXT.
It's got to be gradual. They can't just
it's not going to be an overnight thing. But yeah, it's just weird to think what the future of people like Gargano and Adam Cole is going to be. Like, we know there's this, the future of Adam Cole still very much in doubt, and people of that ilk. Roderick Strong, for example, like how long is he? It's just weird to think about, like, no one is safe in NXT when you got the people who were cut and you hear these stories like who is left on the chopping block.
Well, here's my thing is like, God, can you imagine the unrest backstage in all brands?
Right.
I mean, really, honestly, especially with NXT right now, I'd be scared as shit.
Talk about like a complete hit to the morale. The fact that like all these people are going, and like it's not just numbers on a sheet. It's not just a byline with like numbers and dollars and cents. It's not just another wrestler. These are people's friends and colleagues and cohorts, and they're all like just leaving. And so what does that do to your psyche on that level? And then just also the ever-present threat, you could be next. It doesn't matter if you're a champion or a former champion, if you're on TV or not. If Nick Khan doesn't like how it looks on the balance sheet, then you're gone, brother.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty much how it works. And I mean, let me ask you this, though. Who do you think's the most surprising release out of all those names?
I mean, of this most recent batch?
Yeah.
Like I said, I think Bronson Reed and Mercedes Martinez and Tyler Rust are probably my three top ones. Also, Jake Atlas is another name that I'm really surprised at, because he's a guy who I kind of put on the same level as Jungle Boy, and I think those two are very much intertwined in their careers, and they're very good friends too, and like they'll tell you about how influential they've been to each other's careers. But like you think about that divergent path. Jungle Boy went to AEW, Atlas goes to NXT and WWE. I think both have amazing skill sets. Both are amazing athletes, and if they're given the right tools and the right opportunities, can do amazing things.
Oh yeah, Atlas was super impressive his first month or two.
Right, Atlas, like, wow. the way they kind of covered him and put him and portrayed him in NXT, I thought was very cool to see. And then he was put on this back burner, and now he's gone. But I think that really opens him up to a lot of opportunities, possibly in AEW to hang out with his best friend Jungle Boy, and all these other opportunities out there in the independents and so many other places he could go. I think Atlas is someone that they are going to come back. It's going to bite them. WWE. I think that his success will be imminent. That's my bold prediction.
I could see him even in like a Ring of Honor, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, even if he doesn't get picked up by his best friend's Fed.
Right. I honestly, like, we talk about the speculation. Everyone thinks about who should go to AEW, but I mean, we're still forgetting there's plenty of other opportunities out there, or presumably there's other federations out there. There may not be as many spots available. I think that's what's also a weird side effect with these mass releases, is that you've got all these indie feds and other promotions that are in their own ways struggling in the wake of the pandemic. And there's only so many spots to begin with in a healthy, non-pandemic society, and then that gets cut down, when things are a little more like bare bones.
Right.
And so where are all the spots? Where are all the jobs that are open? And like how many people are going to get consistent work in that kind of realm? So, and not to speak of the smaller independents, the locals, the ones that like we're in the middle of this indie renaissance before the pandemic where all these names were kind of coming to independence, and there's like kind of like nice indies, there's like different tiers of quality depending on what territory you're in. And so like they're all recovering and they're all trying to bounce back. So I think it could be a boon, but at the same time, it also could lead to a scarcity of work and a scarcity of jobs.
Want to hear more? Subscribe to This Week in Regret on YouTube for full episodes of the podcast, dropping every Thursday night. Don't forget, we're also on SoundCloud.